According to Wikipedia, the average human being shares his or her birthday with 18 million other human beings.
Shut up.
There is no evidence that sharing that same birthday creates any type of behavior link between those people. If there is, Wikipedia hasn't discovered it yet.
Shut up!
Engage.
This is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to UniversiTV. I'm Jessica K. Richards.
I'm Ashley Zanter.
And I'm Scott Nielsen.
And today we're talking about This Is Us.
Groan.
No, we
Half
just
grown.
groaned in the last episode. You can't groan in every episode.
I said groan.
Besides, this
You're
is
not the groan police. I have rights.
Hey, those groans were legitimate. I don't know what's going on over there.
Sarcastic groans are legitimate groans.
Thank you.
Not always. Not always. Okay, so first of all, I want to get started talking about clearly, we have different feelings about this. Clearly. So, we're going to talk a little bit about This Is Us today. One of the things that's interesting about this show is that at the end of the pilot episode, so that title card that we just read at the beginning, at the end of the pilot episode, we discover that this family, that these people that share the same birthday are actually all part of the same family. And the show follows several generations of the Pearson family as they navigate through the challenges and triumphs of life. This Is Us has a twisty format, and it's constantly sort of challenging our assumptions from episode to episode. So I have feelings about this. Ashley has feelings about this. Scott, what did you think?
So, I found myself groaning a lot and feeling very emotionally manipulated. But damn it, I just wanted to watch. I would come home and be like, what happens next? Like, I'm sort of like, if you took you, Jez, and Ashley and put them together, like, I liked watching it, but I sort of hated myself for it. So I enjoyed it, but it has problems.
Okay, so, all right. Let's kind of break this down. One of the things that's really interesting about this, it was created by Dan Fogelman, and he's done a bunch of different stuff. He did Crazy Stupid Love, which was a really popular film, and I think a really enjoyable sort of twisty format. Again, big twist at the end of that movie. He also did Tangled, as it turns out.
I also hate that.
So
Tangled is great.
And and Cars.
Also
Disney's
hated
Cars.
that.
Yes.
I can't defend Cars. No.
So
I can defend the ride.
He also did a TV show called Gallivant. The musical sort of television medieval show. It's a parody of like fantasy epics.
I need to have a conversation with Dan Fogelman.
Yeah,
you really liked Crazy Stupid Love.
I did really like Crazy Stupid Love, but notice that's one of the only ones that's not a television show.
Right. No, Tangled and Cars are both movies.
Yes.
I only listed one other
Yeah, but
TV
to be fair,
show.
you also know I don't like animation.
Wow.
Yeah, okay.
We're unboxing some problems here. So that's interesting. I mean, I kind of I've never watched Gallivant, but I want to. But Cars, that Crazy Stupid Love, it kind of has that same. It makes sense that he's made this. This show really likes to do at the beginning of the episode, let's introduce this premise, and at the end of the episode, let's do this twist that makes you go, oh.
Right. Were there any of the twists that worked for you? Like, were you... I actually found the very first episode, that pilot twist, where we find out that everything is happening simultaneously, right, to be really compelling. Like, what was funny about it to me was that, Jack Pearson, played by Milo Ventimiglia, is wearing like this flannel hipster outfit. And he, in my mind, he totally fit in with 2017 fashion trends. And it turns out he was from the 80s. And I was sitting there going like, they nailed, how did they do that? They nailed that. I thought that was great.
They fooled me 100%. Absolutely 100%. I did roll my eyes. I was like, oh God. Because it was the Modern Family twist. It was the exact same thing that Modern Family did in its pilot, which is here's 3 groups that are seemingly unrelated. Now let's connect them at the end and make you go, what?
Right. Except for this one's probably less... It's a little bit more melodramatic, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I came to the show after it had already gained a lot of steam. Actually, after it had finished.
I made you watch it.
She did make me watch it. This episode is her idea. Anyway, So I knew about the twists, but my problem is that when everything is a twist, nothing is a twist. It's just annoying. So like Crazy Stupid Love, there's the one twist, right? You find the one twist. Oh, they're family, right? And so it works in a movie. I think it works in a really great twist works in a movie. But this is also one of the issues, if you remember, I had with The Good Place, where ending every episode with a twist was just frustrating after a while, because if you know a twist is coming, the twist doesn't mean as much.
I disagree with you, and this is the reason why. For me, what I really like about this show is that it's getting at this thing where you have these people who are living their lives, and as we get to know them, their characters change, they evolve, they grow, and I actually feel like that's really real to life. So that twisty element at the end actually sort of blows up this domestic experience where the people around you are recalling, we're all living in the same moment. It's sort of this, it's all happening at the same time. And for me, that's really important.
So I'll answer your first question and then kind of touch on that a little bit. So the twist that worked for me was the scene, I believe it's episode 3, where Randall is talking with Beth, and the kids run out and they say, Grandma and Grandpa are here. And you think, oh, we're going to get to see Mandy Moore and Milo Ventimiglia in old person makeup. And they open the door and Miguel is there. And I immediately said, you son of a bitch. What did you do? And I was terrified. And I was
heartbroken.
Right.
I mean,
except it was a false lead, right? We don't actually know what happened, but there's some assumptions later. And that kind of gets to my problem. I agree with Ashley that too many twists essentially none of them become really important. It just becomes like a gimmick. And I feel like it plays into what my biggest problem with the show is that it's emotionally manipulative. It says, we're going to make you feel this thing now.
So, okay, for me, that moment, right, that you're talking about there, though, like, didn't that, for you, reflect sort of what it feels like to have a step parent? Because we have all the nostalgia. We have all of this expectation about what that's supposed to be like, what this phase of our lives is supposed to be like. And then here is this D-bag who just shows up, and it's, like, I mean, I don't know that that's always the step parent experience, but I felt like some of the ways that This Is Us is trying to talk about and participate in this is that it does feel invasive. Like, we experience the same thing that the Pearsons are experiencing from their perspective. And that twist allows us to have all of the expectation and all of the nostalgia, and then undercuts it with this surprise that echoes a lot of that domestic drama.
I think it loses something because I don't see the characters as three-dimensional. I mean, honestly, at all. I think the characters are so contrived. They're such stock characters, right? You've got the mother who loses her identity to motherhood. You've got the father who tries to be a good father. He's held up, and then, oh, look, there's a vice. We found a vice, right? And he's dealing with that. And then you've got the really hot guy who's really deep if you give him a chance. And then you've got the fat girl whose life is consumed by her own fatness, okay? And then you've got the black guy struggling with blackness, though I will concede that of all the characters in the show, Randall is the most interesting.
Absolutely.
And most well-developed. But so many of the characters are so basic to me in so many ways that when they evolve, I'm just like, oh, finally, nuance. There it is. I found it 7 episodes in.
Well, and that speaks to it. Like, yeah, Kevin is very stock. Kevin's like, I mean, I've seen that story before, the actor who struggles with identity. We've seen the I'm overweight and I have to deal with that. What I love about Randall is that Randall and William's interactions, really, I think is fascinating, especially juxtaposed with the flashbacks with Randall and his parents. And I think the reason he's three-dimensional and the reason he exists in such an interesting space is that there's so much meat around his experiences of you have to deal with being the black kid in an all-white family. And your mom doesn't know, hey, you need to put lotion on his skin when he gets to the pool or he'll get ashy. Or you're not cutting his hair right. You have to take him to a barber, and someone else's mom has to tell you that, which is super embarrassing for Rebecca in the episode. But, to her credit, she bucks up and she deals with it. And there's so much that's interesting about that. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been white my whole life. I don't think that's going to change. So I'm very much an outsider in that perspective. And I just think it's fascinating to have to sort of be put in that position of like, yeah, this guy doesn't have a culture. He exists in two separate areas.
Right.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's also why Memphis is the best episode in the entire season.
I 100% agree with you. I think that was so beautifully done and is absolutely fantastic in the ways that it portrays those kinds of moments. And I loved every minute of that episode.
I hated
wept.
Memphis the least.
I wept.
Well, I mean, it kind of does go back. It's I guess I felt to kind of qualify my emotionally manipulative statement, because you could argue, yeah, all media is emotionally manipulative, but I always feel like in that show it's saying, okay, at this moment feel sad, rather than just eliciting the feelings of sadness. It's telling me how I'm supposed to feel. It's like a laugh track. It's like a clap now, applause. I remember talking to Hummy Man, who is actually an Academy Award winning film composer. He actually did Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Wow.
And he talked about directors would come to him and say, the actors just really didn't do it in this scene. They didn't get the emotional response I wanted. Will you play some music to get the audience to cry? And they'll be like, cool, minor key, written, here you go. And I very much felt that way, especially when Damon Rice's 9 Crimes played over Rebecca giving birth. I was like, cool, sad music. I'm supposed to worry and be sad now. Cool.
So, but I thought it was successful in the ways that it does elicit that kind of, and not only that, but that's the reason people come back to shows week after week, is that they can get a predictable experience. And this show offered sort of a nuance in terms of the tragedy, in terms of the experiences that people were having in their own domestic life. You were sort of saying like, Rebecca, she just fits into this. It's the same story. And I will give you that the band plot line towards the end of the season is
horrific,
terrible. I was really disappointed when that was what they decided to do with it. But I also think that that's such a common experience for women, and we don't talk about it enough. Right? And this is a show that's actually actively engaging with that issue. So for me, that did feel nuanced. And some of the fights that Jack and Rebecca have over the course of the season, those felt real in a way that not a lot of television show fights. That's the season finale. When they rip each other to shreds, that felt marital. That felt real to me in a way that I haven't, and that's part of why I liked the show, is because they're playing with those tropes and they're expanding on them. That's what I found satisfying.
So I agree with that. I agree that the fight at the end is visceral and real and great. Although it does end with him being like, "You're my love story."
Yeah.
Like it ends on that note of like, we're in love. This is getting a season 2. Tune in next fall.
Well,
right?
I think they've already been, isn't it? Like 3 seasons?
Yeah.
They got renewed for 2 more seasons.
Yeah.
It's
BS.
They're just confident.
No,
It's a wildly popular show.
Yeah, it's a wildly popular show because it's emotionally manipulative. My problem with it is, like, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there's television that's not manipulative. The point of television is to make you think that that things are real that are not, right? It is fiction, but you are buying into its realness. That's the point. The problem is on This Is Us, I see every single string they're pulling while they're pulling it. They have invited me to the making of the sausage, and I am watching it, and I am horrified. And I think that's my problem, is like when I'm feeling, because I will freely admit that there are moments watching it I felt sad, I felt happy, I felt nervous, I felt, anxiety. There were the moments where I was feeling that, but every single time I felt that emotion, I was hyper aware that I was like very violently and aggressively manipulated into feeling it. And that's the problem that I had.
It feels a little inauthentic sometimes.
Yep.
I feel like I'm feeling sad because I'm supposed to, not that like this really. There was the exception of when William passed away. Mm-hmm. That was legitimately really upsetting. And it's kind of those moments with Randall, with William, with the relationship between Kevin and Randall, which I think is interesting in that they sort of hate each other.
Until the moment they don't, and then they're best friends.
Right. So,
which is exactly how that works.
Right. But that's the thing, is that when they're fighting, I think, okay, this is something real, relatable, that's interesting. And then, as Ashley put it, they become best friends and it ceases to be interesting.
Well, so I'm getting a little technical here, but one of the things I really like about this show, and I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier on, but so this is like a meta-modernist text, right? Where it's taking all of these different elements that happen over a long period of time, and it's smooshing them all together into this one moment. And so when we look at postmodern identity and postmodern experience, what we do typically is we flip stuff on a binary axis, right? We're looking at it in terms of how do we invert the expectations, the structures that we are used to, and do something different with them. It's a pulling apart of things, right? With a metamodernist text, you layer stuff together in a way that makes it into something that I actually feel like represents human experience more authentically. And that's the thing that I really like about This Is Us, because what it does, as you're watching the show, what it does is you get this layering of the experience of being Jack Pearson's son, and what that means over the course of the entire first season. And that doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in 100. And I love that they're blowing up these small things. Like there's that whole sequence at one of the beginnings of the episodes that is just a laundry machine, the washing machine that they've had forever, right? And we just watch it as it goes through its own life. And then as we're watching the scenes in the basement, the laundry machine becomes like a character, a fixture, somebody who's part of the story. And I know that's weird and awkward, but in a lot of ways, I don't think we represent those parts of domestic experience on television today. And so for me, this show does a lot towards actually authentically representing that.
So here's my problem, though, is that the laundry machine is more of a well-developed character than Kate.
Okay.
Oh.
And I am not actually on this point going to disagree with you because
Yeah, let me talk about Kate for a minute here, everybody. Okay, so Kate is the sister, right? She's the sister. She is the overweight character in the show. And my problem with this, and I will let you guys know right here on air that I am what is considered a plus-size woman in the United States of America, okay? And the problem with this show is that Kate's only singular, unchallenged, defining quality is her fatness. And I say that word on purpose, right? Because we can butter it up, we can put sprinkles on it, we can say plus size, we can say overweight, you can say whatever you want. But in terms of fat studies, which is a burgeoning field in terms of academia, saying the word fat is important. And not only fat, but Kate in the show is qualified as morbidly obese. She's a very, very large woman. And the problem here is that the show thinks it's doing a great thing by having her be a large woman paired up with a large man. Right? So we've got her boyfriend character, Toby, in the show, and he's supposed to be like, he's more well-developed than she is. My problem here, and the only way that I can even consider forgiving this show for the sins it has committed against depictions of fat people on television, is that what it's trying to say, I hope, genuinely hope, is that when a man is fat, he is fat and. He is fat and funny. He is fat and smart. He is fat and a good person, right? When a woman is fat, she is fat, period. That is the only thing about her that we notice. It is the only thing we acknowledge, and it is the only thing allowed to define her as a person. That's the only way I can forgive it, because the way that this show treats her fatness, her experience of fatness, is blatantly unforgivable.
Well, and it's weird because it is pioneering in the ways that it has representation. And so there's part of me that goes like, okay, this is really clumsy and terrible and awkward, and I hate everything about the way that they're doing this. But I'm also glad they're doing it, because at least then we've walked through this space. I agree with you. I think that her representation is just, it's appalling. I'm really disappointed with that overall.
Well, I remember the scene that really struck me with Kate. She's in her Fat Anonymous meeting. Mm-hmm. I don't know what they would call that.
It's a support group, Scott.
Oh, you're right. No. It's a support group. And the skinny girl is like, I just have a struggle, and I look at the mirror and I see myself, and I know you guys all make fun of me, but it's hard, which is a real problem people have. Body image, body dysphoria that leads to anorexia, bulimia, eating disorders. And Kate kind of calls her out and is like, that's BS. You then can get on a scale and objectively see you are not fat. And it's like, yeah, that's absolutely true. You're disregarding her experience, and that's not okay, but that's true. And I don't really know how to feel about it, because she gets called out. Tony says, no, that's not okay. You hulked out. And no one is on her side. There's no one like, yeah, you go, girl. Final act 3 of the movie where you learn how to be a person and stand up for yourself. So I think the show kind of handles it in an interesting way. I just don't know how to feel about it.
I mean, I do not know who her character's for. Because let me tell you something, watching that show, it didn't inspire me to lose weight. Her weight loss journey, her struggles with eating, her struggles with how she dresses, how she views herself, how she's living in her brother, who's an actor, Kevin's an actor, right? She's living in this Hollywood world where she clearly does not fit in, right? But Those are my comprehensive feelings. That one groan is my comprehensive feeling about her character, because she can't possibly be for fat people, because I don't know a fat person who would watch that show and be like, you know what? I'm going to get better because this show is inspiring me to get better by how they're talking about weight and what it's like to be fat. But it can't possibly be for skinny people either. So I don't know who it's for.
Well, I mean, I think that the primary emotion that I felt while I was watching it was just anxiety. And I don't know that that's why, that's really what they were trying to get at, but that's really what they do all the way through it. You know, there's that scene where she gets on the airplane and everyone is horrible to her as she's trying to buckle herself up. And so I found it really irritating. One of the things that makes me feel concerned is that, you know, as Scott mentioned earlier with the Randall character, we kind of face the same problem, because it makes me wonder how well the show is actually doing at depicting the race stuff. Because from the outside looking in, it seems like it's doing the thing really well. But I wonder how nuanced that portrayal is and how behind it is, right? Is it actually up to date in the terms in which we really should be talking about racism? Or is it behind and we just don't know it because we're not Black American? Mm-hmm. Right. And so it makes me feel anxious, just generally speaking, because I think that the show does some really interesting stuff with domestic, but I don't feel like it does a great job of sort of dealing with these characters. Right. In these particularly nuanced ways. Right.
Well, and it's interesting because so we've got Randall, which has this really interesting racial dichotomy and his backgrounds where William's like, yeah, I experience, you know, racial oppression and I marched.
Right.
And we've got Kate, who, you know, not a great character, but we're discussing it. There's an interesting something to discuss about it. We've got Rebecca and Jack with the domestic thing. With Kevin, I don't really know what the point is. Like, so it's like, oh, I'm unfulfilled in my multi-million-dollar job where I'm super ripped and I don't do something fulfilling.
And Ron Howard calls me occasionally.
Right, right. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I have an acting degree. I get the idea of wanting to do meaningful work. But I don't actually care about his arc. I don't care. I care that he disposes of women like they're playthings. Until he discovers that his first love from when he was 4 is really who he should be with. Also, I'm totally Team Sloane. I love her. Maybe just because I love that actress and she's a playwright and she's attractive, my type. So, Team Sloane.
I was also Team Sloane. I was a little disappointed when it turned out that he had an ex-wife.
Yeah.
And I was sort of like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing now with this.
We're just going to reset
But at least it pivoted somewhere meaningful for him, because I think he has been, of the characters, floundering the most, right? We don't really know what they're trying to do.
Well, and this is why I think it's so uninspired for me, because what it seems like all of these characters boil down to is stop judging a book by its cover, everybody, right? Just because the fat girl's fat doesn't mean she's not deep. Just because the hot guy's hot doesn't mean he's not deep. Just because the black guy's rich doesn't mean he's not black. And like, I get it. But at the same time, like, can we please do something? Can we do anything else? Anything. Because I am so tired of the stop judging a book by its cover stuff.
Okay, go ahead. What were you
gonna say? I just need to pick up the mic that Ashley just has dropped twice now. No, I mean, I can't disagree with any of it. I mean, I will say this: Kate has her music. Okay, she's gonna sing.
Jesus.
Like her mom. Okay, she's gonna sing because music is really important to them, and is a pointless plot line as well.
It's just because they cast Mandy Moore. We got to make Mandy Moore sing, everybody.
Right.
Got to make her sing.
Well, especially if you're going to do a Nicholas Sparks riff, right? So, because that's kind of what's going on, right? That Mandy Moore, also melodramatic sort of actress. She was in A Walk to Remember, which is her big like breakout role, right? I would consider that to be. And so here she is again, fulfilling the same kind of space, right? I like the way that this show, I mean, I understand your frustration with the limited character development, but there are some places where I really liked how they dealt with stuff. So there's this moment, we have this trope that always happens in these kinds of domestic dramas where, or Vampire Diaries, 90210, One Tree Hill, all that jazz, right? Where there are two characters who are in a committed relationship, and then it turns out that one of them was dating somebody else, and then they didn't tell anybody who they were dating or that they had dated or that they had some kind of romantic history, right? So in this case, Rebecca had a history with a guy that she's now in a band with, and for some reason, Jack doesn't know that information, right? So he shows up to the bar, and the bandmate walks up to him and is like, I kissed your wife, which is the most awkward and humiliating conversation that you could possibly potentially have with anyone. And I don't understand why it's a trope. It's ridiculous. It happens all the time. And instead of Jack taking the bait and doing what every other guy in that trope situation does, he looks at the bandmate and he says, you don't have any idea what's going on with me and my wife. Like, who are you, this third party who I don't care about at all, talking to me about my own relationship? And that doesn't mean that Jack doesn't internalize it or that he's not concerned about it, because they have a fight later on about it. But he doesn't just like stormily walk away and go like, I guess she doesn't like me anymore, which is what happens inevitably in all those other tropes. And so I really like the ways that this show walks up to that trope and goes like, that's really dumb. We're going to do something more real or different from what you would anticipate in those moments.
Right, but I also kind of felt like that was a contrived situation because, so one, Mandy Moore should have told him. Like, that's common courtesy in my opinion. And Jack should have trusted her. He should have said, hey, I appreciate you telling me that. You are my wife. I trust you. Don't worry about it.
Right.
And I mean, obviously that's their character flaws, right? Or whatnot.
Or at least I feel like some of the anxieties that this show's exploring, right? You know, Jack's conversation with Rebecca about whether or not she should pursue her career, as dumb as her singing career is, I think that those tensions in their relationship about him not wanting to hold her back, but having to inevitably, because of the social roles that they have to play, I think that those are really compelling story arcs, and I really like them. Yeah. And I love Rebecca's relationship with her parents, her family, and how toxic that is, and how it always turns in on herself, right? These sort of nuances in these relationships that grow and change and move around, I think are really great.
Well, I will say that I think Rebecca has probably one of the most interesting moments in the whole show when she doesn't tell Randall about William. She goes to meet him. William's having this like, oh, I could teach him music. Does he like music? He come stay in this car. He wants to be involved. And you think, Mandy Moore, what are you doing? This is awful. How could you not do this? But she's like, I don't want to lose him. And I got it. Like, it was a horrible thing, but I got it. And I felt like it was a motivated, interesting choice. And that was probably the moment that I really appreciated Rebecca's character and thought that was fascinating. Right.
Yeah. And I think that those aren't tensions that we examine in these kinds of relationships, especially when we talk about adoption. Right. So that tension, we look at it very idealistically. And I think as they're uncovering these little moments, these little sort of microaggressions that happen over time, right? There's that great episode where they have the 3 birthday parties at the same time, right? Because they're all triplets and nobody comes to Randall's party. And you're not really sure why. You're like, is it because he's an introvert? And they kind of probe it like, hey, why didn't anyone come? Is it because he's going to an affluent school where, nobody wants to come to his party? And so they're picking at these little, as parents, how do we respond to this? What are the reactions that we have? How do we not overparent? And some of that self-assuredness. And so I like those little intimate moments. I love the moment where Kevin is trying to explain death to his nieces, and it just completely gets out of his control, and he ends up scarring them, and he has to kind of come back. Granted, the monologue about we're all a colored whatever picture.
Vomit in my mouth.
But the moment where he falls off the horse and is struggling to articulate the nuances and the terribleness of death, and even the fact that William dies, right? Like, William dies. There is no salvation for him. This is not some kind of crazy thing, telenovela where he comes back from some restoring cure. He's just gone.
He should have started making meth.
Right.
Then the cancer would have gone in remission.
Yeah, that's right.
For a time.
For a time, right? So that to me, I think, is really that inevitable march, right? And just Jack's general presence. He's dead. He's been dead for a long time. And he's still there for them and constantly present. And the way that it folds in on itself, I really like some of those elements to the show.
The father dynamics with Jack are spot on. Some of the best moments in the whole show.
Right. And so for me, that's kind of, in terms of how this show fits in with other parent dramas, like there's Parenthood and other shows that kind of try and play with and articulate these anxieties about the domestic sphere and womanhood and all that stuff. I feel like this show does a really good job of sliding into that space and dealing with contemporary concerns. I agree. I think some of the characters are stereotypical, but I think we've come a really far cry from like stuff like, Family Ties. This is a lot more nuanced than that. And I think that that's progress, and I think it's good. And so I've really enjoyed the show, and I cry every episode, at least once.
Right.
And I find everybody to be, I crave it. I crave the show when it's gone. I'm waiting for it to drop. I want to click onto Hulu and be like, is it there yet? Okay, I can sit down and have this emotional experience. And I found it to be really satisfying. And I didn't feel like I was I enjoyed the process of being manipulated. It was cathartic for me and actually a respite from all the other crap that's going on, So I found it really soothing.
Sure. I think that's fair. And I'm going to go ahead and make a guess here. But if you had to give This Is Us a letter grade, what would you give it?
I think for me, it's probably somewhere in the B minus space. I wouldn't say it's an A because there's some really dumb stuff that happens. There is. If I was going to give Memphis a grade, it would be an A. That episode alone. But I think other than that, the show hangs out around a B minus space for me.
So I think that's fair. I'm going to agree with that. I'm going to give it actually, in a twist of fate, I'm going to give it a B+. Mostly because your impassioned debate has made me think it's a lot better than maybe I thought just on my own. I think it's problematic in some ways. I think it is manipulative in the ways we've talked about and some of the characters. I think it's really a realm of averages, like you said.
Right, yeah.
Kevin and Kate really drag it down, but I think some of the moments with Rebecca, William, Randall, and Jack bring it up for me to that B+ range.
D.
Whoa.
I'm giving it a D. No, here's the problem with it though. Like, I will go ahead and say the only reason this show is not an F is Randall. For me, that's what it is. Because when he's on screen, how they depicted his struggles with anxiety, I think were really interesting. And I think that it were handled well for a network show, especially, But everything is just so frustrating for me. I cannot get past what the abuses brought against Chrissy Metz's character, who plays Kate. I can't forgive those. And honestly, I cannot see a way out for that. I cannot see how in 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons, how that's going to get any better, because my understanding is that they're going to force her to go through an exhaustive weight loss process, because it's written into her contract that she's supposed to lose weight over the next several seasons so that we can follow this character's like journey towards health, or however you want to categorize it. But inevitably what's going to happen, and the first season has already had this conversation, is that she's going to get skinny and still struggle because there's always going to be a fat girl inside of her somewhere. And I don't see that being helpful or progressive for anybody, anywhere, anytime. And even for those people who can relate to the character, and they are out there and they have been vocal about their ability to relate to her, I think that this particular depiction is really toxic, because what you're saying is if a woman only identifies as fat, that is okay because that is the thing that defines her. And that is stupid, and it deserves a D. So I'm giving it a D.
Strong words from a strong woman.
Yes. No, I do think it has some real problems. So I'm looking forward to the second season. I think that, So what else have you guys been watching this week?
Well, to satiate the 12-year-old boy in me, I have been watching the new season of Samurai Jack.
Oh, is it amazing?
It's everything I wanted. Because
I'm so glad.
There's not. So when they did the original Samurai Jack, they always intended it to be kind of violent and kind of epic.
Right.
But they said, this is Cartoon Network. This is a daytime show. We can't get it past it. So every time they slice something open, they said, that's a robot, even if it looks like a person. It's like, he has robot arms. And then they'd show black liquid, which was originally blood, and then they just changed the color to black. So they don't have to do that anymore. Jack gets stabbed. He cuts people in half. It's gory. It's great. It's everything I want as an adult. It has evolved for my taste because I still like the original, but this, so good. So good.
So I'm watching Harlots on Hulu.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so amazing. So it's Hulu's one of their new original scripted series. And the whole thing is about this 18th century brothel in London. And there's a rival brothel. And there's the upscale brothel and like the middle grade brothel. And the middle grade one's moving up and the higher one's threatened. But the interesting thing about this show and why it's getting quite a bit of buzz right now, because it's only about 4 episodes in, is that the entire show is written by, produced, and directed by women. Every single episode of the show. It's all women, and the whole show revolves around women. There are male characters, but they are strictly secondary, and they only have little tiny bits where they show up in the show. And so the whole thing, and I think maybe this was just a knee-jerk reaction. I watched This Is Us, and I needed like a feminist anthem to get me through the rest of my day. And Harlots is an amazing show. The writing is gorgeous. The writing of the show is absolutely beautiful. The performances are spot on. Jessica Brown Findlay, who played Lady Sybil in Downton Abbey, is doing something completely opposite where she's playing a high-level prostitute, which is not Lady Sybil at all. But the show is absolutely gorgeous. It's this saturation of colors and these strong personalities that are clashing in a society that was distinctly patriarchal. And I am absolutely in love with it. And I would highly recommend it to anybody who's looking for a show.
Yeah, so I'm also doing a period piece, but with less weird hair than Harlots. I have been watching Poldark.
Ooh.
I've never heard of this.
It is a BBC show. It's 17th century, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bodice ripper. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just a straight bodice ripper.
Aidan Turner.
Aidan Turner is walking around with a tri-corner hat. And
abs.
And that's essentially the plot, so far as I can tell. He's a dark character.
He's Poldark.
Is his name Poldark?
Yeah, that's his name.
God.
It's based on these novels, and it's been on for a while now, and I've been hearing some like buzz about it. But I checked it out. It's weird. So, like it's straight up. I don't know how to feel about it.
Are these novels it's based on? Are there shirtless men with a crashing beach at the background of them?
Nailed it. Like, I mean, literally, that is exactly what is happening. They're on the British coast. There's less shirtlessness and more like flowy cotton.
Okay,
right?
that also counts.
With a low V neck.
That counts.
Lots of chest hair.
And lots of chest hair. So those are the features.
Does he have long flowing hair?
He does. Okay, so yeah, it is a bodice ripper in the truest sense. So I've been checking that out. It's interesting. I don't know how to. There are mines.
I'm gonna put that on my list.
Yeah, that's about the size of it. So, yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us this week on UniversiTV, and we'll see you next time. I'm Jessica K. Richards.
I'm Ashley Zanter,
and I'm Scott Nielsen.
Make sure to check us out on Facebook or Twitter by liking us at UniversiTV Podcast, or you can email us at universitytvpodcast@gmail.com with your recommendations for future episodes.